All right, let's jump right in. Today we are tackling a topic that is so incredibly common, but often really misunderstood. We're talking about dysfunctional uterine bleeding, or DUB. So what is that, really? Let's break it down.
Yeah, if you've ever dealt with irregular bleeding, these words probably hit pretty close to home. It's so frustrating and confusing when your body doesn't seem to follow any kind of predictable schedule. And you are so not alone in feeling that way.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What is actually happening inside your body to cause all this, well, chaos? That's exactly what we're going to get into right now.
Okay, first things first, let's give this whole experience a name. Because understanding the definition, that's the first step to really getting a handle on it.
So here's the deal. DUB is basically bleeding that happens without ovulation. That's when an egg is released. It's irregular, it's unpredictable, and, this is key, it's only diagnosed after a doctor has checked for and ruled out everything else it could be, like pregnancy, fibroids, or other conditions.
And just how common are we talking? Well, the data shows about 750 cases for every 100,000 person years. To put that simply, it's a significant number. This is not some rare thing. It's a really widespread issue.
Now check this out. While DUB can happen at any time during the reproductive years, you can see a really clear spike. It peaks for women who are between the ages of 30 and 40.
This is so important to understand. Your doctor doesn't really have a test for DUB. Instead, it's a process of elimination. They test for everything else it could be, and only when every other possibility is crossed off the list can they say, okay, this is DUB.
So now that we know what it is, let's dive into the why. At its very core, DUB is all about a hormonal imbalance. You can kind of think of the two main hormones, estrogen and progesterone, like dance partners. For the dance to work, they have to be perfectly in sync.
And this slide just illustrates that dance perfectly. See, in a typical cycle, estrogen builds up the lining of the uterus. Then, after ovulation, its partner, progesterone, shows up to make that lining stable. But in a DUB cycle, ovulation never happens. So you get all this estrogen building, but progesterone never shows up to the party. We call that unopposed estrogen.
It's really like a domino effect. No ovulation means no progesterone. And without that stabilizing hormone, the uterine lining, the endometrium, just keeps getting thicker and thicker. Eventually, it gets so overgrown and unstable, it just can't hold itself together anymore and starts to shed completely randomly.
Okay, so that's what's happening on the inside. But what does all that hormonal chaos actually look and feel like on the outside? Let's talk about the clues, the signs and symptoms you might actually experience.
The one word to remember here is unpredictability. The bleeding can be all over the place. Sometimes you go a long time without it. Sometimes it's frequent. It can be super light or really heavy, and last for a few days or much longer. And another thing, since there's no regular ovulation, you might not get those classic PMS symptoms like bloating or sore breasts beforehand.
Now, all this unpredictable blood loss can have a serious knock-on effect. A really significant number of women with DUB, we're talking somewhere between 20 and 60%, end up developing anemia because of the iron loss. And that can leave you feeling exhausted, dizzy, and just plain wiped out.
So, if you're experiencing all of this, how in the world does a doctor figure out what's going on? Well, the whole diagnostic process is kind of like a detective story. The goal is to rule out all the other suspects to find the real culprit.
This is the absolute non-negotiable starting point. Before any other tests, before any other theories, pregnancy has to be ruled out. Full stop.
From there, the investigation gets pretty thorough. A full blood count will check for that anemia we talked about. Other blood tests will look at things like thyroid function, since that can mess with your cycle too. A transvaginal ultrasound is huge. It lets doctors see if there are any structural things going on, like fibroids or polyps, and sometimes they might take a tiny tissue sample, a biopsy, just to make sure everything looks okay.
So these are some of the main suspects that need to get cleared. The bleeding could be from fibroids or even some medications. It could be a clotting disorder or, in rarer cases, something more serious like a malignancy. Each of these has to be carefully investigated and crossed off the list.
Okay, so once the doctor has ruled everything else out and confirmed that it's DUB, the conversation shifts. It becomes, what do we do about it? And the great news is there are a lot of really effective ways to regain control and get your cycle back to something more predictable.
The treatment options usually fall into two main buckets. You've got hormonal options, like an IUD that releases progestogen or the combined birth control pill. These work by basically reintroducing that missing dance partner, progesterone, to restore balance. Then you have non-hormonal options, like certain NSAIDs or tranexamic acid, which don't fix the hormone issue but are really good at just reducing the amount of bleeding.
Now, for cases that are more severe or just don't get better with those first-line treatments, there are other options. These are definitely more invasive and require a really thorough chat with a specialist about your personal goals, especially around things like future fertility. They can range from a procedure to remove the uterine lining called an ablation, all the way to a hysterectomy in some specific situations.
So, there you have it. We've hopefully gone from a place of confusion and frustration to one of clarity. We've defined what DUB is, we've understood the hormonal reason behind it, we know the symptoms, and we've looked at the ways to manage it. The most important thing to take away is that just understanding what's happening in your body is the most powerful first step you can take. So now that you have the map, what's your next step going to be?